So thank you very much for being here and for so graciously listening. So it's been almost 9 years. It will be 9 years in May that I left my training temple, San Francisco Zen Center, and came to Berlin. And with friends, we opened Akatshin Zendo. And I think, I'm not so sure, but I think it has been 6 years that I started regularly to travel to Athens because people there kindly invited me to practice together. So, for the first time in almost a decade, I, so to speak, returned to my training temple, to San Francisco Zen Center. And for the past 3 weeks, I have been a student in a retreat myself, a pretty intense retreat, and that's, I guess, why it's called Gringosh Intensive. One of my wonderful teachers, Tenshin Reb Anderson Roshi. So for the past 3 weeks, also earlier today, I've been sitting here in Berlin, and yet somehow I also was at Gringosh. Quite an interesting experience. And Reb Anderson has been, in a wonderful way, teaching the Lotos Sutra. The Lotus Sutra, it's a Mahayana Buddhist scripture, comes out of a Buddhist Indian context, but it has been most influential in East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, and really had a deep influence on the spirituality and the culture of these countries. The Lotus Sutra has been quite important in my own practice, like a focal point or a turning point. And this was given as a gift to me also from Reb, from Tenshin Roshi, already many, many years ago, because as he expressed over and over again in the last 3 weeks, this is also a central point to his own practice, namely this. In the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra, there's this wonderful image and this wonderful idea which goes like this. Only a Buddha and a Buddha together can fathom the depth of reality. Only a Buddha, so that's a quote. Another way of saying it would be only a Buddha and a Buddha together can completely realize wisdom and compassion. Yet another way of saying it is only you and you together can completely realize who you are. So this has been with me for many years, and I think some of you have been practicing with me in Berlin, in Greece, in Athens, have heard this from me. So especially in Zen practice, that's definitely how I started out. Some of us might have the idea, well, I by myself can realize wisdom and compassion. I by myself, for example, sitting in the Zendo, in the meditation hall, dedicating myself to just sitting, dedicating myself to the posture of Zazen, I myself will wake up and completely realize wisdom and compassion. That's fine. That's a wonderful starting point. Hopefully, it's also my wish for everybody, including myself, in this process of practicing and studying for ourselves and with ourselves, hopefully the turning point will come where we understand that we actually never practice by ourselves. We always practice together, always. We can make a deep and great effort to enter a cave in the Himalayas or the Rocky Mountains or the Alps and meditate for 9 years by ourselves in the mountains. And my deep wish is that if we do this, we understand that even up there, we do not practice just by ourselves. Another way of understanding only a Buddha and a Buddha can fathom the depth of reality. It's my humble understanding, but I hope it's kind of helpful in our everyday life, is this. Yes, it can be quite nice in practice, in meditation, in life, to come to a point where we think, oh wow, I understand something. Might not be the depth of Buddhist wisdom, but I understand something. However, if then we go into contact, we go into dialogue with another Buddha and express our understanding fully, this other Buddha might say, oh, thank you very much for sharing this with me. Oh, what you're saying is really wonderful. And would you be so kind as to listen to me now? And I'd be happy to share my understanding with you. And then we might hear something that's either a little different or at times really different from our understanding. So I'm saying now, and we can talk about this, that's the true practice of Zen. And what's the depth of reality in this example? The depth of reality is the actual experience that our views are not fixed. Does that make sense? I think it's very simple. Like I'm holding on to a view, and then you come with your view. And if I open up to you completely, if I really hear what you have to say, what I understand is the depth of reality is unfathomable. It cannot be realized by me or any person. It can only be realized together in dialogue. And I think this practice, again, I feel greatly indebted to Tenshin Roshi, who started telling me this more than 20 years ago. This practice of a Buddha and a Buddha lies at the heart of what I consider to be Zen practice. Now, this practice of a Buddha and a Buddha can be very beautiful, very joyful, but can also be challenging. Because what this practice is about is practicing or making a wholehearted effort to express oneself fully. And here, most of us, maybe I should say some of us, are having problems, including myself. I think the way I want to say it is like this. We humans have this deep wish. We want to be seen and we want to see. That's another way of talking about the depth of reality. Especially we want to be seen, but I think we also want to see. I could also say, sounds similar to me at least right now, we want to be loved and we want to love. And then we might meet somebody where we feel, oh wow, I want this person to see me, or I want to be loved, or I want to see, I want to love. And suddenly we might have a little problem. Something happens in us which we don't necessarily clearly understand, but it might manifest as fear. and we turn away. So Tenshin Roshi Reb Anderson, in the beginning of our wonderful, intensive, he talked about a story, a parable of the lost son, which is also in the Lotus Sutra. And I had known it for many years, and I confess I never found it particularly interesting. It's quite similar to the parable of the lost son in Jewish and Christian scriptures. But the way Reb started to talk about it, I became very interested. So the rest of this talk, I want to tell you very briefly story as it's being told in the Lotus Sutra, and also why it suddenly became so alive for me. So in the Lotus Sutra, there is a man, father, who has a son. It's never being mentioned that there might also be a mother, father and son. And at a very young age, the son leaves the father. He basically runs away. It's never being explained why he runs away, which I think is an interesting point. And he wanders through, I guess, India for many, many years in poverty, often in fear of his life. His sole intention, because he's so hungry, often is to find a bite to eat, to beg, or to get a job for a day for a little bit of food. And this goes on for many, many years. At the same time, father, dad, also leaves the hometown, moves to another city in ancient India, and becomes very rich. I mean, very rich. So in the Lotus Sutra, it says 50 years pass, and one day the child, the lost child, in his wanderings, in her wanderings, comes to the city where the father lives and stands outside a mansion, which is huge, gigantic, a palace. And far away in the middle, the father sits on a lotus throne. And actually sees his kid and recognizes his child and is overjoyed because he has been looking for her for decades. But he doesn't do anything. At the same time, the child outside the gate is flooded with fear and seems to think, oh my God, this place is dangerous. Somebody could come and enslave me, or worse, kill me. I better run away. And she does. And then the father quickly sends a servant who says, would you please come into the house? But the child It's of course not a child anymore. I don't know which word to use. Daughter, son, so I stick to child. Person. The impoverished person is so dreaded with fear, she faints. And then Father says, just sprinkle some water on her and let her go. And she does, but he sends two servants behind her, and they say, you know, we offer you a job. And you don't only get minimum wage, we double minimum wage. And she never got something like this, and overjoyed, she accepts the job. And the job, as it is described in my translation of the Lotus Sutra, is to clean excrements. It doesn't say whether human or animal excrements, maybe all of them. And the child, lost child, does that for many, many years, very diligently, every day, gets up and cleans. Reb Anderson called this the phase of dung shoveling. Dung shoveling. Then one day, Father, this immensely rich person, takes off his rich clothing and puts on rags, dirty clothes, smears earth on his face, and goes down and silently works side by side with his child. And after a while, he says, you know, I'm old. I feel like a father to you. So he doesn't say, I'm your father. He says, I feel like a father to you. Allow me to take care of you and give you a little better food or mattress to sleep on. And this is how it continues, according to the Lotus Sutra, again, for many, many years. They got really old then. And then Father started to see that in dung shoveling, in cleaning excrements, and in just being there and not running away anymore, his son, his daughter, this person gained some confidence. So Father said, well, actually, I'm the owner of this house, and you can see it's a pretty rich place. So would you become my treasurer? Would you please take care of all the gold and all the other treasures I own? So the child did, the lost child did. Again, many years. And also, how would we say this in the modern world? He kind of developed and grew in this position. And then eventually, the father felt he was passing away. He must have been 150, 200 years old. And then he invited everyone and his child, and he said, this is my child. I've always recognized her, and he will inherit what I own. And the lost child accepted. End of story. So I told it at length, so I don't have so much time anymore to express what I started to find very interesting around this story. There are turning points in practice, turning points in life. And I'm suggesting to you, maybe the story, if we look into it deeply, is a mirror where we see ourselves. Or the story is a Buddha whom we meet to fathom the depth of reality. I think I said it's not explained why the child ran away. Abusive father, bad relationship with the mother. I think it's like this. We all run away. In the beginning, and I don't know when this beginning is, we all run away from our true home, the connectedness with all of life. Or I'm fine with using the word Buddha. We don't remember when we cut ourselves off from the deep web of life. We don't remember, but I have deep faith that this is what we are doing. And then there's a long phase where, of course, that's a pretty drastic description in the Lotos Sutra, where we just run around and we try to survive. And then there might be a meeting. I don't think it's chance, but it's too deep for us to understand many causes and conditions why this meeting happens. And it could be a piece of art, it could be an animal, but for most of us, it's another human being. And there's a real chance of finally seeing who we are and seeing who the other is. But when the lost son, the lost child, has a chance to meet with who in truth he is, Buddha, he gets really frightened. He even faints and runs away again. But there's still this longing, this urge to be reconnected. So in a way, he accepts the job, double pay. He accepts the job, and then there's this period, again, as Reb calls it, of dung shoveling. Of practicing. What? Many things. I don't want to go into detail. And that's another turning where he stays put. He doesn't turn away anymore. She doesn't run away anymore. And finally, there's recognition. So the story, parable of the lost child, is a story about the twists and turnings of the way of practice. It's never linear. Sometimes they say practice goes in steps and stages. Okay, one can say that. I would say it goes in twists and turns. And yet, in the end, or around many twists in this process, we encounter innumerable Buddhas on our way. And with each one, there's a chance to wake up and see, as they say in Zen, our true face. Thank you very much for listening.